Okay, let's jump into it. So I had 2 or 3 people that actually say they were very excited about this session. So yeah, I love the high energy and high expectations, but hopefully we'll live up to that. So looking forward to it. So let's first of all address the elephant in the room here. We've all implemented GA4, but we actually haven't been given the tools to use it effectively. And in my view, there is good training out there, but it's very kind of generic to the industry and not kind of tailored towards e-commerce and how e-com and marketing teams actually need to answer questions to inform their business decisions. So the goal of this session is really just to give you that confidence in using Google Analytics 4 to uncover those really useful and actionable e-commerce insights. So a quick bit about me. I've had 14 years within the grocery, beauty and lifestyle brands. Prior to that, I was actually a civil engineer. I was working with London Underground for a consultancy there. Surprisingly, my final year dissertation on the soil cavity collapse of centrifuge modeling, etc., didn't come in that much use today. But what does help is my experience across different startups, all the way up to big global brands across field sales, marketing, e-com roles. And this has really kind of given me the experience to kind of, when we're looking at data, to actually go, okay, well, where are we trying to get to? What's the answers we're trying to get to here? So that's why I set up Data Made Simple consultancy in 2023 to really help multi-channel brands become better with their data and ultimately make better decisions with that. So I want to help teams not just trust their data, but actually also communicate that better to others to take action. So what will we cover off today? So first of all, we'll touch on why did we even need to start with GA4, what's different about it, etc. And then we'll start to strip things out and go, how do we make this actually useful for e-commerce that actually informs rather than confuses? And then we'll run into some specific examples of how to get to some e-commerce insights that will hopefully help you in your roles, and a few watch outs through this as well. Because if you've actually dived a bit into GA4, there'll be various points where you go, this doesn't feel right. So we'll touch upon some of those as well. And then in the end, I'll leave some good time to actually, if you've got any questions, etc. Now, before I jump any further, I just want to kind of, well, first of all, just check we've got people in. It's always funny when you're talking here. So can I just get a sense in the chat, on the chat box here, where everyone sits in their experience with Google Analytics? So are you going in for the first time today for Google Analytics 4, or are you somewhere in the middle, or is it you using it every day and you're getting pretty advanced in it? Would you mind just putting in the chat also, just to make sure I'm not talking to myself, just where you sit? Okay, awesome. Already seeing in the middle. Great. Okay, beginner. Great. Somewhere in the middle. Okay, good. I mean, anywhere is good. It's just trying to sense the room, because I think the challenge of a session like this is that I can either go too deep and everyone goes completely overwhelmed, or you can do not enough and then you find that, like, I know this already. So it's a tricky balance, but you just guide me along the way if there's any questions, etc. And good to know that there are people here. So why do we have to make this change? I think there was this kind of general kind of question here, is like, why are we changing? Well, ultimately, this is Google's answer to a changing marketing landscape. So first of all, how Google Analytics was originally built, it was built based on web. You're on your desktop, etc. Now, over time, that's changed. We're wanting to measure apps, moving between devices a lot more, etc. Which is why the old version isn't fit for the future, and which is one of the reasons why this has shifted now from session-based modeling to event-based. So that's why when you see in Google Analytics 4 it says number of events, etc., that isn't that's due to the change in this digital behavior. And the second 2 points are kind of related. One around the legal kind of landscape, so GDPR, CCPA, etc., where there's a requirement to for the user to own their data and making sure that they know where their data is being stored. And then the third piece is around more the tech platforms responses, like Apple particularly, who started that journey on being privacy first, and that led in turn to the removal of third-party cookies. Now, we won't go too deep in this today. I'm obviously happy to talk more in that, but I just want to kind of keep it quite high level. But let's just keep going in terms of then the common other questions. Why should we use Google as opposed to another analytics platform? Well, actually, Google, I think is still going to be, Google Analytics is still, important baseline. So having a really, having the basics with Google will help you in your Google Ads performance. It's also just really good in behavior-driven insights. So there is a lot of kind of machine learning capabilities, etc., in there. It's just that I think a lot of us haven't really unlocked that yet. And then finally, I think around being a source of truth. So yes, there are other platforms which certainly help and accelerate that source of truth. But I think what we can rely on is looking at Facebook ads platforms, TikTok, even email platforms, and they all tell us different revenue values. So Google is a good spot to kind of centralize your attribution. Now, of course, it isn't perfect. So I think now we'll kind of dive into a bit more detail. And I think when you first walked into looked at Google Analytics 4, I think it can be a little bit overwhelming. And I think what makes it needlessly overwhelming is the standard reports that come out in the first place. So you might be seeing something like this. You might have already adapted some of this on the left-hand side, but ultimately this isn't helpful in its current form to answer the questions. So I wanted to run through a kind of accelerated learning curve of Google Analytics 4. So I think this is actually known as a Dunning-Kruger effect, but I've adapted it to a learning cycle of any platform or any new tool and this is certainly what I go through. When you start somewhere, you're really not sure where you are, and then you get a lot of initial confidence and actually this is pretty easy, I know what I'm doing, and then you dive a bit deeper into a platform, then it's oh no, there is a lot more here. And finally, as you discover more around the platform, the learning, etc., then you reach this kind of what they call the slope of enlightenment. So we'll go through a really sped up version of this, and we won't stay in the valley of despair for long, but it's important to highlight that point. Right. If there are any other questions at this stage, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll crack on. Okay. So now, before we dive straight into Google Analytics, I think I can certainly be guilty. I think many can be guilty of looking at a platform and then forgetting what the question you want to ask in the first place. So I think it's always really important to start with what are the questions we're trying to answer here. So I'm going to try to answer some of these questions, or at least guide you in the right direction. It's always tricky when I don't know, obviously, your setup, but we'll start with the top of funnel. Where are visitors and revenue coming from? Are we spending our marketing dollars in the right area? And then how did X recent campaign perform? How are we doing within each channel? And then the next stage we'll run into is the behavior. So how is our content performing? If you have a blog, how is blog content performing? How is that moving? How is for instance search moving consumers towards purchase? With the search piece, that's always a really powerful place to look, because it really shows those highly engaged users how they're just deciding what they want to do next, and ultimately that if they're not finding the answer they want. So a couple of caveats that we'll run through in that bit as well. And finally, conversion. How are our product performance? What's actually driving our sales? And then which product should I be investing in more based on the metrics we can see? Okay, let's jump into it. So where is my traffic coming from and which campaigns are working? Now in Google Analytics, this was easy. So, you just jumped into the all traffic section, then and then you could click through to each of the individual reports. You can't do that frustratingly now, but you can still create something very similar on the sidebar, which allows you to then look at each channel. So you start at the all channels and look at how each is performing. Then you go into each of the individual channels. So let me start with, I've got a couple of demo accounts. So the main one is the Google Analytics 4 one. We'll start here as a starting point. And what I'd like you to do is head over to, hopefully you'll see something like this, or if you don't, it might be under, it depends how yours looks. This is a frustrating thing. You don't know what you're going to be receiving. Or what we're looking for is traffic acquisition, or just acquisition, or all channels. I think if some of you I work with, I think it will be in all channels. And then what you see here is like, where do I start? What am I supposed to be looking for? I think what it doesn't help with is if you look at these sections here, these metrics here, of engaged, events per session, event count, these aren't helpful metrics for e-commerce. So don't include them. If they're not helpful, don't include them. So this is where this has a read-only view in this demo account. So I'll jump over to another account, but this is where at the top right, you should see a pencil icon. So if I jump into this account, you'll see a pencil icon here. And what we want to do is actually just clean this up a bit. So we want to remove certain metrics. And then, if you actually look at this a bit further, it's like, where's the conversion rate, session conversion rate in here? We want to add that in. So what I'll do is I'll actually put in the chat the actual, there we go. Let me just put this in here 1 second. If you look in the chat, these are the recommended section that I'll put, and I'll walk you through. So if you go into metrics at the top right, like if you don't have the edit permissions here, you just have to watch along, but we'll dive through it anyway. And then you'll want to put the sequence of users, sessions, engagement rate. Notice that this is actually following very similar to the Universal Analytics interface. Remove engaged in sessions. You can keep engagement time per session. That's like your session time, ultimately, how long they're spending on. Engaged sessions for a user, I'd remove. Events per session, not helpful. Events count, not helpful. Now let's add in here session conversion rate. And then I'll put that up here. And then the watch out for conversions here. And this is also a watch out for session conversion rate. You'll sometimes see in conversions, you'll have multiple events here. So what you'll see when you add conversion rate is that it will be, well, let me save it first, and I'll show you what I mean. So you'll actually be seeing a session conversion rate for all the events that you have marked as conversions. So you need to make sure, ultimately we want to be looking at purchase conversion rate. That's the one that everyone wants to know. So unless you're selecting that, you might see these numbers looking really high, like 30, 40, sometimes 100%, because the conversion events are actually marked all events. So that's just a watch out there. Just make sure that you're choosing purchase. What I would actually recommend is unless you want multiple conversions in Google Analytics, I'd actually only have one conversion in there, which is purchase. So you actually go to do that. Let me just check on time. So I won't actually run through how you do that piece, but it's in the admin section, and you go into the conversions, and you just make sure to turn off the other events for conversions, because purchase is the main one you want there. So again, like this is when you're looking at conversions, I would actually change this metric to, which I've already done in the notes, is purchases, because that is actually going to this is only going to give you your actual purchases, and not any other event in there. So already we're starting to clean things up. It's looking a bit cleaner. The next questions we'll be going is, well, okay, let's look at what's happening here. What's our, and I'll jump back to this as the demo store. Are we seeing high amount of revenue from certain channels? For instance, like, why are we seeing direct traffic? It's a high percentage of total revenue. How much is unassigned traffic is there? What does cross network mean? So there's a lot in here where you'll start to go, okay, well, where do we go next? So at this point, take a breather, and then we'll just recap what we've done so far. So we're removing all the irrelevant metrics. We're putting in the ones that are useful, and then this is where we're actually going to save it as a new report. Let me just finish off this now. Okay. So you've now added your metrics. Press the save button. What I'd recommend is saving as a new report and call it all channels. Now, we'll answer some of those questions that I just highlighted early, but I think it's important to now look at how do we put this into a section in the left-hand side, so we can actually start to make it useful, get to the all channels, get to the individual channels. So what we do from here is we just save that as all channels. We want to now find that. So we now go back. And we go to the library section at the bottom when this appears. So this library here is your way to alter this left-hand section. Once again, if you only have view access, you won't see this. So you just follow along this section. We'll go into more of the insights in a moment. Now, what you're seeing here now is that all channels you've saved here. So what you can do at this point is start to recreate what you saw on the left-hand side of Universal Analytics. So here you can actually call it acquisition. This is the collection name. And then this is the topic. So we want to call it all channels, or this is the all channels section. And then within that, we're actually also going to put the all channels section, right? I am apologize if I'm speeding through some sections. I will. This is recorded, so you will be able to kind of come back through, and obviously we'll talk through a bit more. Now, if we go back, and if we look back in the, left-hand side here, we should see, and sometimes this. Oh yes, that's right. So it's not showing up at the moment on the left-hand side. Why is that? Because you've got to publish the left-hand side. So now when we refresh, we should see it here. Okay, acquisition, all channels. So now you're seeing that all channels. So what's different from all these other reports is the fact that you're now customizing the reports you want to actually guide those decisions. So from here, I won't go through all of it, but what I will do is show you how to then create one for each channel. So you go back to the library. Now you want to use this same report that you did before, and you want to make a copy. The reason why we're recreating from that one report is because you've already cleaned up those metrics at the top. You've got rid of the events per session, etc. And then let's say referrals, and we can do this for each channel. I'll just do a couple for now. So now I've renamed that. How do you get to show just the referrals and actually make it useful in this report? You go into filters. This is your superpower in building these menu items. And then you go session conversion rate. Sorry, session default channel group. Now, for this, I won't run through the difference between user channel default group, session default group. There's also a channel group. That's probably for another session. For now, let's just focus on, this is the best place to start, is session default channel group. Exactly matches referral. Okay, so now we're just seeing the referral traffic. Obviously, this test site, not much here. But then this isn't that helpful in itself, right? Until you start to go to your dimensions here and choose session source. So now we're starting to see a bit more info about what referral traffic is coming in and how much revenue, etc., is driving from each of those channels. Incidentally, if you don't have the view access, if you only have the view access, you can do the same thing at the top here. And this is also good to know when you're not wanting to edit an existing report, you just want to have a quick look at a filter. So you go to add filter. Let's do the same thing because this might show a bit more. Well. So now when we look here, you can do the same thing. You can look at the source, and this is actually a bit more helpful. So we'll have a look at what revenue we're getting from each channel. So you can see how, as you build this out, and incidentally, that's when you need to save that report and then put it into that collection you saw earlier. So you can then see how you build out this left section, starting to have each of the channels on the left-hand side, and just making sure to save it as a session source or session medium, dependent, or session campaign, just to drill a bit deeper into that. So that's the example of the referral. Now, of course, you can go really deep with this, and this is going into email campaigns, email flows. You can actually segment using that filters. So for email, this is where it depends case by case. You'll be choosing the filter email, and the session source is usually your flow names. This is actually an example of if you could either get the session source to contain or not contain those email flows. So then you're splitting out your email campaigns versus your email flows. Right. Take a step back. I think we've gone through a fair bit just to kind of understand how the filters work, how to start to do the left-hand side. Now we actually want to be answering some questions and actually make it useful. But I think this is the point where we go, when you're actually looking into this data, you might be finding it's not looking right. I'm seeing a lot of direct traffic. I'm seeing a lot of social ads are bucketed into unassigned. Why is my social revenue showing up so little? Why is my conversion rate showing up so high? There's a lot of questions at this point, I think. And I think this is a common challenge at this stage. And I think where it comes back to now is really understanding about attribution and the importance of UTM parameters. I don't want to go too deep here. So I just wanted to check in at this point. Is this making sense? Is this on the right level? Am I going too detailed? Are we tracking along here well? Like I say, it's always a bit tricky when you're talking. Okay, good. Always a bit tricky when I'm talking to myself. Okay, great. I also want to really quickly jump to, I think what we might do is jump, after we've done this section, jump to the purchases bit, because I think this is where we can add the most value of like actually making decisions from your you know, how well your each of the products are performing. And I don't want to miss that bit out, because there's some really good insights in there. But what I do want to do is, we've talked a bit about reports here now. Now we want to jump into another section, which is explorations. So reports, think of, actually, I should take a quick step back. Home, I actually don't use home at all. I find it pretty unintuitive. You can't edit the layout really. You know, there's limited stuff you can do here. Reports is your place where you can really customize it, where you're looking at day-to-day reports. Now, explorations is where you want to dive a bit deeper. I would leave also advertising for now. That's another time. But this, why am I jumping in here now? Well, this is the point where you're going, okay, I've split out all my channels. How do I actually, you know, some of it doesn't add up. Why is all this traffic or revenue being bucketed into this section? So go into explorations, and you can do this in the demo account if you only got access to that one. Now, I don't know how much you use this one, but what I would start with is in the variables section, ignore segments for now. You're going to create dimensions. I should take a step back. What we're trying to do here, we're trying to understand where our traffic is coming from. So what is organic social, organic search? Where is the traffic originally coming from? And that's based off what your session source is, what your session medium is, and what your session campaign is. That's how Google decides which bucket it is sitting in. So we need, in the dimensions, we're going to do session default channel group. The second one is session source. It's in the way, so I can't see the session source. And session medium. And then also session campaign. We're going to import that. And then we're going to put the metrics, which we'll do as sessions. And let's do revenue. I'll do purchase revenue. Right. Well, where's my data? So what you need to do here is actually move this into this section. The fastest way, there are 3 ways to do it. The fastest way I find now is just double click on each, right? So I'll double click on channel grouping. I'll double click on session source. Double click on session medium. I wouldn't include campaign for now. That would be going a bit deep, but and then double click on the sessions and double click on the purchase revenue. Okay, so what we're seeing here, and you can actually reduce this. Sometimes it's a little bit funny layout. I should stretch it out. What this shows us on the left here, on the right here, is what is driving Google's decision to place it into that channel group. So organic search, well, it's based off the session source and session media and Google Analytics, Google and organic. Now, if we scroll down some of these, sometimes you'll spot at this point, it will say something like referral, and then it will show up as TikTok or you know, another social platform. This is where it's a really good place to actually, there's a download button at this point. I'd recommend maximizing this, so because we're only seeing 10 rows at the moment. You need to go show rows to 500. And then you want to export, then there's an export button, and then do a bit of an audit. Where is my data? Where is the data coming from, etc. And this is why it's important to look at it, because ultimately, if you're seeing things not feeding in the right places, that's obviously not helping you answer the question, am I spending my marketing dollars in the right buckets? So this is why it's so important. And it's all related to UTM parameters. So if you're not familiar with it, it's what you see at the end of any URL when you're clicking on an email, etc. It's the source, where are your customers coming from? It's the medium, which is how are they getting there? And then it's the campaign, is why are they going there? So this is a really important concept because actually there's a study done really recently around TikTok profile click-throughs actually come in as direct unless you add these UTM parameters. Now, of course, that's fine if you're only doing a few, there's low traffic there. But if you're doing more, then you need to make sure you've got a really good setup there. Because again, we're going back to how do we know where we're spending our marketing dollars effectively? So what I'll send the link here actually. Let me just see if I can get to it. Oops. I'll send in the link, the template that you can use to help you build this out. And thanks for the feedback, by the way. I think, yeah, it's a tricky one to find the balance of like how fast to go, how slow. So we are speeding on a little bit. And I'm happy to kind of obviously cover this off at a slower pace. So that link I'd recommend looking at afterwards is just a really good way to organize all your templates and get make sure that you know that the right channels are segmented in the right buckets. So you put your URL in here, you put your where the traffic's coming from, which channels it's coming from, and the campaign. And I've actually the clever thing about this one is you've actually got pre-built parameters, dynamic parameters, so you don't need to be so you know that they're going to sit in the right bucket. I'm happy to cover that off separately. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm actually what I will do is cover off this very briefly. I'd love to at some point run through how the benefits of search and how to drive through that bit. But for the interest of time, I'm just going to touch very briefly on this one. So those filters that you did, remember earlier, you can do the same for pages too. So this is an example of understanding where your blog traffic, how valuable your blog traffic is. If you have, you just have to make sure that you've got the page path and screencast contains blogs. It's as simple as that, or obviously that depends on whatever you have as your subdomain. Then you're going to see this report and you can save it in that left-hand section again. And again, you have the flexibility to kind of add those metrics as you need. I won't cover this now. I think it would be good to talk more about these expirations, but this is just showing an example of this. This is actually showing what's happening before you search. Where is a consumer getting stuck and they're going, no, I'm going to go to the search box at the top, because those are the real insights that help, because you're then going, well, okay, there's obviously some information on this page that is missing, or this isn't the product they were looking for. Why? This is created through the expiration section, which I can send an example of afterwards. Okay, a quick check-in before we've probably got another 5 to 10 minutes of this conversion section. Aware that trying to find the pace is a bit tricky, so just let me know if there's specific questions you have at this stage, or if you're happy to move on and dive into more. I'll take the silence as a good thing. Oh, cross network, yes, okay. Cross-network is actually kind of sits as part of Google Ads. I don't know why Google really needs to split this out. There's actually a really good example here, which is Google Google for channel grouping. So I'll send this, actually, I'll send this in the chat because this actually is quite helpful. This is how it defines each channel. Now, cross-network is effectively like Google Ads Performance Max. What I tend to do here is actually bucket cross-network within Google Ads, because it's not usually that helpful unless you're really doing a lot here. So there's a way to actually group your channels and simplify the channels by creating a new channel grouping rather than using the default one, which has all these, a few random ones in here, right? You end up having a lot of paid other sometimes, which just isn't helpful. So you can simplify this. This is another thing. If I had more time, I would love to run through, but there's a way to really simplify the channel groupings. Well, I'll just send that in the chat. Okay, so conversions. So if we jump back to Google Analytics now and go into the report section. Now, you'll probably see it in the monetization section, or if you've built it out already, it will be in a conversion section. You'll see e-commerce purchases here. So again, it's always a question of like, what am I looking at here? How is this helpful? Don't forget, you can edit these metrics here. You can add in session conversion rate, etc. in here. You can actually model it to look like the old Universal Analytics. What I actually find surprisingly helpful is this section, which is a way to look at two metrics on a graph. So in this case, and incidentally, when you actually select this is what you're seeing here. So what I'm going to look at is items purchased and items viewed. Now, what this is showing here is the cross-section of how many items are viewed versus how many of those same items are purchased. So it's ultimately like, it's looking like a conversion rate on a chart, but you're not just looking at the conversion rate, you're looking at it on a scaled up version. So what this basically means is that an item here is showing that there's been a lot of item views and there's been a lot of item purchases. But in this situation here, we're seeing let me just get this right. Items purchased. They're getting the scaling right. Items purchased. Items purchased. So this is actually showing there's been a lot of items viewed, but not a lot of items purchased. Just to watch out when you're looking at this. Items purchased. Yeah, this is actually a good example. So a lot of items viewed here, but not purchased. This one is actually a lot of items purchased to the view ratio. So another way to look at this is the ones at the top right are your hero products, because that's where you're getting a lot of purchases, but you're also getting a lot of product views. On the top left, you're seeing the items that are viewed a lot, but not being purchased. Now, you've got to just watch out which way you have the graph around. So that's why I'm just hesitating here. Whereas in this corner, you're getting not as many views, but you're getting a lot of purchase from that. So again, that's like that conversion rate. So it's kind of like this graph of showing where your products are, how your products are performing by in a graphical form. So let's dive a bit deeper into this. You can actually recreate this in the exploration too. So we're going to go back to Explore, create a blank exploration. Now let's just familiarize myself. We need, in the dimensions, we need item name, items viewed, items purchased. You can also add items added to cart as well. Because what we'll also do here is actually look at what items are driving my, where are they being purchased in the, which channels, sorry, are they being driven from? So let's go to items. Sorry, item name, sorry. Item view. Oh, items. I can't see behind the screen. Items purchased. Let's just stick with A3. And then now we'll see the, you can go to the scatter plot. You can double click on each of these. This isn't showing up. So I think about why this is not showing up. Item name, item viewed, item purchased. This is part of the challenge of Google Analytics. Sometimes it doesn't always play nice. I'm sure you have these problems as well. It's it can sometimes be temperamental. Sometimes you have to change the dates. It was just showing up just now. If not, we can work off the screenshot and I can show it, run through. No, all good. We'll run through item name, items viewed, item purchased. Event count. Okay, so this is a great example. Actually, sometimes you'll just bits will be missing. So it added event count in the values. That's why it wasn't showing up here. So actually, that's a really good learning. Sometimes just check all these, all the values, all the columns, all the rows that they are the items you want. So now when we go back to the scatter plot, no, it still doesn't like it. I think it's, there we go. X value should be items purchased. There we go. We made it. If you're like me, I think you've probably seen these same challenges that you'll get stuck down this rabbit hole. Ideally, you don't want it to happen during a webinar, but it's a great example of how to get around it. So let's dive a bit deeper. We want to understand, okay, this birthday tea is doing really well. What you can actually do now is duplicate this, and we want to understand what is driving that. So you can actually right click here, and you go include only section. So now we're only seeing the birthday tea. What I want to know now is where was I purchasing? Oh, sorry. Which channels are driving the purchase of this birthday tea? So what we do here is we jump back to the table, and notice what happened when I had done that. It's actually added this filter saying I only want to see Google birthday tea. So now we're seeing this. Now we want to understand the channel grouping, right? So now we go into the, sorry, wrong section. This is in dimensions, session, channel. There, session default channel grouping. And now we can go and either drag this or double click, and it will populate here. So we can now see which channels are actually driving the purchase there. So that's quite helpful if you want to see overall what's driving that purchase, so you can inform those decisions. Okay, we should be investing more in our organic search is performing well. What does help also if you add in session conversion rate? I'm pretty sure this will work. You double click here. There we go. We're seeing the conversion rate here as well. Now, one thing you might see, you might go, this looks really high. Again, don't forget about that thing around conversion rate. If you've got multiple things you've marked as conversions, then you're not looking at the purchase conversion rate. You're looking at the conversions of everything. Not that helpful. So just to watch out there. You can get around that in the report section. There are ways to get around that in this section as well. That it involves using filters. So there's another example of actually how to see the conversion rate by product, by channel. You can actually obviously have all products there. This is another. Let me just look at the time. So I think the important thing here when we're talking about conversion section is you've got this graphical scatter plot which helps you understand where all your products are sitting. You've got this section which is looking at the conversion rate by product, by channel, and understanding where I should be investing more in my channels based on how the product is performing. So aware that we've just dived into a lot of different information here, I think is trying to find that right balance of the information that makes it really, really useful. But I just want to kind of jump into like the kind of summary part and go, hopefully we're starting to move you along this curve where it's like, okay, I'm still a bit overwhelmed. There's a lot of data which seems a bit off, but we're actually hopefully moving towards, actually there's a lot you can do within the platform. Is just playing around with the explorations. The key part of it is really simplifying the interface. So that part of the section where we were running through the menu items on the left, the collections, and actually tailoring it to your needs, and then start with those questions you want to answer, and then look at Google Analytics 4, and then using that UTM campaign template to improve that accuracy, and starting to create and share some explorations to dive that bit deeper. Okay, so we left a few minutes for questions. Like I say, hopefully, okay, that's good. Thanks, Rachel. Good to know that's a helpful report. Yeah, there's a lot more we could run through here, and I think, like I say, it's just trying to find that right balance. The most important thing is when you've got a specific question, we can generally get to it. Is just knowing the best way, and then sometimes knowing what some of the problems were with it. So yeah, if there are any questions, you're welcome to kind of stay on and put in the chat here, or I think you can use voice if you want. Let's start off with paid social. Yeah, so paid social is a good one, because sometimes by default it won't. Let's jump back to here. So this is how Google categorizes its traffic. So if it sees any traffic that, for instance, let me go to the right section. Paid social. So if there's any traffic that, those UTM parameters that includes paid PPC retargeting, that will bucket. Oh, and also the source matches the social site, then it will bucket into paid social. So if you should be able to see it if you go into let's jump into the reports here. And then traffic acquisition. hopefully all channels you're seeing on the left-hand side there. And then you might need to expand out. I mean, maybe, I mean, in this example one, yeah, they don't actually do paid social in this one. I mean, it should sit in here. It just obviously depends how much, one, how much you're investing in paid social, or two, I think is very common. You have got in your Facebook ads, TikTok ads, you've got UTM parameters, but they're wrong, or they're slightly mislabeled, which will end up it going into the unassigned bucket. So like I say, one way to do that is going back to that exploration and looking at each of the channel groups. What you can also do is, let's have a look at unassigned. Type in unassigned. Yeah. So I think, sorry, I'm just reading the chat. I suspect you're not suspected all unassigned. So one really quick thing you can do right now without having to do all the exploration stuff is type in unassigned in the default channel group, go to the traffic source. Sorry, this is when you see this, there's a plus button here. Press the plus button, go to traffic source, and then go to session source medium. And then you can actually see, this isn't that helpful in this demo example, but what you usually see is, Pinterest, TikTok, some search stuff. That's a great sign to go, okay, we just need to sort out that UTM parameters. And taking a step back, this is so you can better understand where your marketing, where your traffic's coming from, so you can make better marketing decisions from it. So that's a really good call out, Rachel. Okay, well, I'll wait another few seconds, but yeah, really appreciate you taking the time today. I think step one is just don't get overwhelmed by it. Just get into it every day. Just really, don't be afraid. Start using those UTM parameters, and then just any specific questions, just we'll shoot them my way. I'm always happy to point you in the right direction. You can find my LinkedIn here. I do post a fair bit at the moment around Google Analytics, tips. My strength generally is in translating data into something that's actually useful for e-commerce and marketing teams. So anything in that field is really something I like to post on LinkedIn. Oh, great. I'm glad you have found it helpful. Right, all good then. Well, all the best, and do reach out if you have any other questions. Thanks very much.